Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air from St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Elaine Cha.
My voice started changing pretty rapidly.
Your voice is what puts you there, not your gender.
A choir is a symphony of voices. Those voices you're hearing now are from the members of the Black Tulip Chorale. The group has everything you'd expect from a collection of singers, the booming basses, the soaring sopranos, and those pristine harmonies. But there's more to these singers than just their voices. This Sunday, Black Tulip Chorale celebrates its 5th anniversary with a performance at the First Presbyterian Church of Kirkwood. And now to talk about that milestone and why this group isn't like other choirs, we welcome a founding member of the Black Tulip Chorale, Dr. Ken Haller. Ken, thank you so much for being here.
Danny, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Ken, we're just listening to the last notes and verses of the song "Oh My Love is Like a Red, Red Rose," and that was actually a performance from 2018, the year that Black Tulip was founded. So tell us about this group's origins and how you came to be part of it.
Right. Well, when I have sung in choral organizations for over 3 decades now, and they have mostly been what are called TTBB, or tenor, baritone bass, the bass clef. But I wanted another challenge, a mixed chorus, and Robert Stumpf, who founded the Black Tulip Chorale, his idea was to start a full vocal organization, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, SATB, but to add a little twist to it. Mm-hmm. Usually in an SATB chorus, the sopranos and altos are women, and the tenors and basses are men, and they identify as that way, and that's the way it is, and that's how people are segregated into vocal parts. But his idea was, there are a lot of people who don't fit in that dichotomy between male and female, people who are transgender, people who are gender fluid. Sometimes even cisgender people have voices that do not fit into a male or female stereotypic range. And so he said, how about we have an SATB choral organization that is for the entire LGBTQ community, and your vocal positioning in the chorus, your voice is what puts you there, not your gender. So one of the things about, especially "Oh My Love's Like a Red, Red Rose," which is based on a 2-century-old poem introduced by Robert Burns, that was the very first song we sang. And that was that recording was the very first time we sang it in public. So I thought we sounded pretty good for a brand new organization. But what was really significant about it for me was that whenever you read this poem, whenever you hear this song, you would think it is about a cisgender man singing to a cisgender woman. But if you see the Black Tulip Chorale and see the diversity of genders, gender expression, even ethnicity and culture on our stage, it invites the audience to broaden their idea of what love is and how love expresses itself.
That's such a beautiful sentiment.
Thank you.
And I should mention, that there are a number of inclusive choruses in St. Louis.
Right.
There's the Gateway Men's Chorus, the St. Louis Women's Chorale, and there's a Charis chorus, for women and non-binary people. But Black Tulip, it sounds like you really threw a lot of the structure and some of the paradigms that people expect when they come to a chorale or a chorus. Tell us a bit about, was it difficult making that transition of really, throwing the pieces up in the air, the tenors and the baritones, and saying they should be where their voices place them?
It was actually surprisingly easy. There were a lot of people who had wanted to sing, who did not fit into the gender binary, who just often said, I haven't found a place, a choral organization where I feel comfortable. And so there were people who were really clamoring for this and really wanted to be part of the Black Tulip Chorale. So when we've grown, when we sang that first concert, we had 26 members. At this concert, we'll have, I think, about 45 singers on stage. So it has been something that that has really appealed to the imagination of a lot of people in the creative community. And you don't have to be LGBTQ either. We have a lot of folks who are cisgender and heterosexual and are just thrilled to be part of this and supporting our community in an organization that creates, I feel, really beautiful music.
Yeah, and Ken, maybe we can just take a second on the jargon here. I know we're talking about a chorale, but folks may be more familiar with a chorus or a choir. Is there any difference of what a chorale is?
A chorale is sort of a fancy way of saying chorus.
I see.
Yeah, I mean, choir, chorale, and chorus all come from the same root. I believe it's a Latin root. Interesting. I mean, we generally think of choirs as being more church associated, and the others are more community associated. But what's interesting is that root, we think of them as organizations that sing, but really the root of chorus, chorale, and choir all mean to gather together. And it's about bringing a community together. And actually a chorale that you would put horses in comes from the same root. It means bringing together. And so a chorale is a place for people to come together to make music where all voices can be heard.
Now, I think you just mentioned that the number of singers you have has doubled or
right.
more.
Pretty much doubled. Yeah.
What kind of difference is that? I've not participated in this kind of chorus, but it just to have double the voices, double the layers. Is that more difficult to practice with, or does it just feel better to have that many people with you?
It's really nice to have that many people on stage, to just have that many voices around you, supporting you, singing in your sections. That can be very helpful. If I'm a little bit shaky on something, I can say, oh, that person knows what they're singing. I will sing like them. One of the things that Robert talks about when he's conducting us is to sing, is to create what's called uno voce, one voice in each section, so that we all have that same vocal quality, but we have many more voices producing it, and then harmonies across those sections. So, and one other thing is that we have people with really varying levels of vocal proficiency and experience. We have people who are just starting out in choral music, and others who've been doing it for decades. And Robert he's just a really excellent teacher and mentor, and someone who can say, this is the best place for you, and this is what we'd want you to sing, and this is how we feel you will sound best and contribute to our sound.
Mm-hmm. And Ken, let's talk about that role of vocal inclusivity. Mm-hmm. Earlier this week, I spoke with one of your fellow chorus members, right, Grayson Rosen, and Grayson talked to me about what it means to be part of this kind of queer chorus and finding his place and his voice after transitioning.
I started singing in high school and continued singing through college, mostly as a second soprano, and kind of wandered away from singing as an adult. But when I came out as trans, my voice started changing pretty rapidly from taking testosterone. That drop was dramatic and exciting, but also a little distressing with thinking about how much I had loved singing and not really knowing how to use my voice anymore. And a friend of mine who knew how much I liked singing mentioned this Black Tulip Chorale that I hadn't been familiar with. I showed up for an open rehearsal at the beginning of their season, and the conductor just had me sing some scales to figure out where my range was. He placed me in the bass section, and the basses were great. They were, come on in, and it was still a long process of figuring out how to sing in that new register, dealing with the voice breaks that come with any testosterone puberty. But it was really, really meaningful to be able to find a group that made space for me, that affirmed my gender identity, and really helped me find my voice again.
That was Grayson Rosen of the Black Tulip Chorale, and we're talking today with Dr. Ken Haller, a founding member of the Black Tulip Chorale, which is celebrating its 5th anniversary this weekend as St. Louis's first all-inclusive LGBTQ mixed voice chorus. Ken, hearing Grayson talk mm-hmm. about finding his voice again, mm-hmm. I mean, it seems so significant, but I wonder if any other kind of chorus, any other kind of chorale, if someone like Grayson went through their voice changing, either whether it was transitioning or maybe from some kind of other change, would someone like that have to step away?
That depends on the organization. I will say the organizations you mentioned earlier, the Gateway Men's Chorus, CARIS, the St. Louis Women's Choir, my understanding is that they are all working around these things and making this part of who they are in their vocal ranges. The two, chorus and the women's chorus being soprano alto and gateway men's chorus being tenor bass. But they now have members who are going through these transitions. And it is something that, as Grayson says, can be kind of disconcerting, but is ultimately a very joyful thing. And if you can find a place, an artistic home, where you can be fully yourself in your voice, as you've always imagined your voice would be, that's just an incredibly healing experience.
Ken, this, I want to ask, about choruses and choirs. These are very old, traditional musical structures, and
Right.
a lot of them come from church settings. And I've listened to choirs in churches before, and there's so much structure and there's so much hierarchy. Is there a tension here when you have a group like the Black Tulip Chorale that is trying to reformat that and maybe rise above it? How do you navigate that when this form is something that is so old and so beloved?
Well, I think that anyone who comes into a choral organization has to understand that they are singing in a choral organization is very different from solo singing. And I do solo singing. I've been, very happy to do that. But I know that my vocal quality is very different. I have to match the other people in my section. They have to match me. So I can't just go off on a riff like this and, do a lot of melisma and stuff like that. As Robert says, always watch Robert. So we have to watch what he's doing. And there are some people who, frankly, that may not be a fit for them. But I will also say that I have learned so much about my voice, about vocal production, about breathing, about the things that are important to make my voice work, not just in a choral setting, but in any setting, that my experience with both the Gateway Men's Chorus for years and now for the past 5 years with Black Tulip Chorale has been invaluable to me. And yes, it can be hierarchical, but, the conductor, Robert, he is someone who has... this is his life. He has a degree in choral conducting, and he knows what he's doing. And I am, constantly amazed at the things I learn every week in rehearsal.
Mm-hmm. And it's, as you said, that goal of attaining that one voice feel, there's so many individual pieces and so much, doesn't have to do with your own voice. You have to listen to others.
Right.
And I want to talk a bit about the performance that's happening this weekend on Sunday, the one that marks your group's 5th anniversary.
Right.
And part of the concept of this performance, as you've told to me, is that you're linking music to these landmark moments in LGBTQ history, and that creates part of the format here. Tell us about that and some of those connections that you're making between history and music.
Right. Well, one of the songs that we are doing is, that a quartet is doing is Mendelssohn's Thou Lord Our Refuge. And the reason we're doing that is that was the first song that was performed by the San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus in 1978, which is now, I guess, 45 years ago. And unfortunately, the reason they performed it, that was their first song, is that was performed the night that Harvey Milk and George Moscone were assassinated. I'm sorry, I'm getting a little emotional about that. The San Francisco Gay Men's Chorus had just formed a few weeks before that, and they were in rehearsal. They heard about this. They heard there was going to be a rally on the steps of City Hall in San Francisco. So they went down there, and they sang this song there. And it's just a perfect song for a memorial. It was also the kind of thing that brought focus to the crowd and allowed them to find a way to express their grief over what had happened. There are other anniversaries that we're celebrating. We're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Minnesota being the first state to add gender identity to their non-discrimination protected categories, which is one of those very joyous things in our community. So we have, and again, we're celebrating our own 5th anniversary by bringing back "Oh My Love's Like a Red, Red Rose." And of course, we will be singing "Over the Rainbow" because that is the LGBTQ national anthem.
You mentioned, a national anthem for LGBTQ, and it just strikes me that, this history is so much of something that is constantly being pushed in the shadows or beaten back. The assassination of Harvey Milk, preceding this moment of communal music. And, it's a very difficult time now for
Right,
LGBTQ people. Do you find this music as a kind of escape or perhaps a way to feel these feelings even more sharply?
As you mentioned in the introduction, I'm a doctor. I'm a pediatrician, and I am very privileged to be in a healing profession. But I also feel that music is something that is incredibly healing. So what music, especially in a concert like the one we're doing Sunday, does, it is both something that is something that is healing to the soul, that lets us know that no matter what is happening in the current climate, no matter how many slings and arrows we are being forced to deal with, that there are these eternal things, these eternal moments of beauty that we will always have with us, and that we can create this. It is also the kind of thing that reminds us that we have been through these things before.
It spans generations,
Right.
and it's one
Right.
that it sounds like you're bringing both from the history and to a moment that feels like it's echoing that history right now.
Exactly.
Dr. Ken Haller, thank you so much for being here and for talking to us about the Black Tulip Chorale, St. Louis's first LGBTQ mixed chorus. And Ken will be among those on stage Sunday for the group's 5th anniversary concert, and we will have more information about that concert on our website at stlonair.show. Ken, thank you for being here.
Danny, thank you so much.
This episode was produced by Danny Wissentowski.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Our podcast proudly supports St. Louis artists by using music from Life Creative Group.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations, and leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thank you.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.